Societies divided along ethnic and religious lines. States that won't even recognize a neighbouring country. Could this be solved by redrawing the map? We are talking about the Western Balkans, where a leaked memo about adjusting national borders has caused outrage. Should it really be thrown straight in a bin? This is Roundtable. Hello and welcome to the programme from me, David Foster. Well, the peace plans of a generation ago created a very complicated legacy in the Western Balkans. This new proposal to right some of those wrongs by redrawing a map, well, it hasn't been received well. The unofficial EU diplomatic note was first reported by Slovenian media. It was linked to the Prime Minister, Janez Janša, who says it is fake media. According to the note, a main obstacle to EU integration for the Balkans is the geographical ethnic split of Serb, Croat and Albanian populations within its states. These ethnic divisions fueled war in the 1990s and are still a source of tension today. That could be settled, the memo says, by creating a greater Serbia, a greater Albania and a greater Croatia. This would mean Bosnia being redrawn and parts of its territory given to Serbia and Croatia. There would be the unification of Kosovo and Albania too, which could include parts of North Macedonia. Critics argue this proposal is in direct contradiction with both EU and international efforts to foster multiculturalism in the Balkans. The EU delegation in Bosnia responded saying, "The EU is unequivocally committed to the sovereignty, unity and territorial integrity of Bosnia and Herzegovina." But could this redrawing of the Balkan borders ever work, or is there a different roadmap for stability and prosperity? Well, I'm delighted to be able to welcome to the show once again Engjellushe Morina, Senior Policy Fellow at the European Council on Foreign Relations, originally from Kosovo. We also have Simonida Kacarska, Director of the European Policy Institute in Skopje, that's in North Macedonia. And then we head to Sarajevo, Srecko Latal, their regional editor from the Balkan Investigative Reporting Network. And Srecko, I will start with you first of all. What do you think is going on here? Why have these ideas come out?
Well, I would say, for the starters, that there are two general reasons for this. One reason is that we are clearly seeing a deepening crisis in Bosnia and Herzegovina, but in other parts of the Balkans as well. The previous unresolved issues and the deepening political, economic, and social crisis which Balkan countries have been facing for the past several years have been further aggravated by the COVID-19 pandemic. And it's quite clear that the Balkan countries, or most of the Balkan countries, cannot resolve their own problems on their own. The second part of the problem is the fact that we have been seeing in recent years a steady decline of the presence and influence of the European Union in the region. And in the situation where the EU enlargement, which has been the main guiding idea for Balkan people for the past 20-some years, is slowly disappearing, and as a result, it's quite clear that some local as well as some international officials and leaders are considering alternative options.
So you might think that given the mess that some people describe Bosnia as being, that any idea could be considered to be a good idea, and yet that's not the case, isn't it? Most people in Bosnia itself are very mistrustful of this plan.
Well, it was absolutely logical and to be expected, because after all, many people in Bosnia and Herzegovina and many people from Bosnia and Herzegovina who now live abroad they still very well remember the last time when someone tried to carve up Bosnia and Herzegovina. It ended up with 3.5 years of bloody war. And many officials and many experts warned this time around as well that in case of any new attempt of territorial changes in Bosnia or elsewhere in the Balkans, that we could see a domino effect of conflicts that could spread across the region that would be difficult to control and stop.
Okay. Engjellushe, everything I've read suggests that the majority of people are against this idea, but somebody stands to make political gains from it, political capital, about having this discussion and having this fuss. Who is that?
That's right. There are many critics of this idea, and this idea is not new. It has been lurking in some corners. There's always lurking the idea. It's always somewhere. So in 2018, it popped up in the ALPAC forum in Austria, and it was mentioned by the presidents of Kosovo and Serbia, who suggested that this would be the solution to the agreement between to the peaceful agreement between Kosovo and Serbia. Many critics warned that if we were to go down that road, we would end up into this situation that we have seen in this paper, and the maps are explicit. They show exactly what border changes they mean when they talk about border changes in the Balkans. In this case, I'm not so sure, because it's not very clear the authenticity of the paper. But let's assume that it comes from Janez Janša or his office, from the Slovenian Prime Minister. And it's very worrying, because this is coming just a few months before Slovenia takes EU presidency. And what Srecko was saying just now, the region is already in trouble because of its very weak European perspective. And other problems that are following the Balkans, the deterioration of democracy, human rights, the pandemics, economics, so on and so forth. It's not good news, as one would expect Slovenian presidency to help the region.
But is somebody? Can I just stop you for a second and say, is somebody trying to make trouble here?
I think the way I see it is that yes, the attempted trouble has a flip side as well, not only in the region, but also to destabilize the continent as well. Because the paper also has, it's heavy on Islamophobic tones, and it doesn't mention, for example, external players like Russia and China, but it does mention explicitly Turkey, and it suggests that Bosnia could join Turkey if it doesn't want to join the EU. So it's not only that someone is not only trying to create troubles for the region, for the weak region, politically, economically, socially, and so on, but also is trying to steer some other sentiments in Europe as well.
And would this person perhaps be the Bosnian Serb leader, as has been suggested?
Well, it's a possibility, because we have Srecko here, and he could say more, but Republika Srpska just recently passed legislation in their parliaments calling for a peaceful resolution if the Office of High Representatives continue to stay in Bosnia. So one would assume, yes, this would be very convenient for the Bosnian Serb leader Dodik, who's, in many ways in good terms with right-wingers in Europe, in good terms with Janez Janša, who's also trying to be in the good books of the Christians in Europe, of the right-wingers in Europe, and so on and so forth.
Okay,
so
okay. I want to bring Simonida in at this particular point, but not before we hear from the president of Kosovo. That's Vjosa Osmani. I've got a question for you after this.
The Republic of Kosovo will in no way venture into dangerous adventures of changing borders, the logic that belongs to the last century, or change the constitutional order of the Republic of Kosovo that would jeopardize our internal stability.
Simonida, we have her saying that it all needs a reset, but changing borders is out of the question. How has that gone down where you are in North Macedonia, a country that's had its territorial disputes over the years as well?
it's a country that's had its territorial disputes over the years, but it's also a multi-ethnic country. So for us, the discussion of changing of borders or any official plans that go around are very dangerous, because what North Macedonia has been trying to do over the last 30 years is to show that actually a state can function within, if being diverse as we are, and that solutions do not need to be territorial. So any discussion of, as starting from the premise that this paper does, that it's simply impossible to live side by side by different ethnicities, that it doesn't really bring you anywhere, has significant implications for where we are. The leadership of North Macedonia has been is very careful when discussing these issues, when commenting on them. But for us, for sure, any territorial solutions sound very frightening.
Would this be in effect, and you refer back to the problems that there have been, would this in effect be state-sanctioned, EU-sanctioned ethnic cleansing?
If we take a step back with all the disclaimers on authenticity that Engjellushe mentioned, we are in a situation in which the office of the President of the European Council has been neither in a position to confirm or to deny the existence of the paper, whereas the European Commission representatives today mentioned that they've not seen it. But in any case, such discussions being made at the EU level would be a U-turn of EU policy, would sanction basically exchange of territories and exchange of peoples, which is something that for sure we do not even want to discuss from where we stand and in the age in which we live.
Okay, let me put the same question to you, Srecko. I mean, goodness knows what the Balkans went through 20, 25 years ago. But I mean, this would seem to be an idea of moving people based on their religious and ethnic groups into areas in which they don't necessarily feel they belong. That is ethnic cleansing, isn't it?
I mean, you could look at it from that perspective, but I would like to stress that I mean, we even hear the comments from German officials, and we have heard similar comments from other European officials who very strongly denied any such possibility. And I would also like to stress that a couple of years ago, European Union blocked the idea or attempt for territorial exchange between Serbia and Kosovo as the basis for the resolution of their problem. So I don't think, I really do not see a possibility of the EU approving anything similar to this plan. But what I see as you know, equally big problem is that European Union simply does not have an idea, nor it really has much of an interest to deal with the Balkans at the moment, at the times when they are facing much more serious internal issues, at the times when they're facing much more serious external issues like relations with Russia, China, you know, the reassessment of the arrangement and relations with the USA, with the new US administration. So it's quite clear that the big Western players, US and EU, are further dropping their ball in the Balkans. And in my view, the publication of this non-paper is one of the consequences of this situation.
Let's hear the official response, in fact, from the German Foreign Minister, Heiko Maas, pretty much knocking the idea on the head. Let me make it clear that the ideas that have been expressed recently, the complex social and political issues, can be solved by drawing lines on maps. We consider them not only unrealistic, but also extremely dangerous, and we simply consider dangerous even the discussion about those ideas. Engjellushe, is that the end of the story?
Well, I hope that this conversation, this topic, will be consumed this time around. It looked like in 2018 it wasn't consumed enough, so now we talk about this again in 2021. I hope it will be consumed and just put aside, but I doubt it, because Heiko Maas and the German government have been very against this idea and basically work behind the closed doors to make the topic go away in 2018. But there are other worries in Europe, and there are other problems in Europe, and there are other countries and leaders who have different ideas. And if I could go back to the two reasons why this is very problematic for Europe, not just the Balkans, is that the fact that again, under the assumption that this came out of Janša's office, the two reasons why this could be very dangerous is because he likes to gain popularity among right-wingers, among the Christian conservatives, and this is how he wants to end up in the same group as Orban and Duda. Now, Slovenian presidency takes over in July, and this is problematic because, you know, we all know that it takes quite a long time for Europe to react to troublemakers like Orban and Duda. So it will take a while for Europe to react if Slovenian presidency would push further for this idea. The other problem is that, you know, hypothetically speaking, just assume that Janša's proposal would be supported by others like Le Pen, like Salvini in Italy, like Wilders in Netherlands, then this would form a very strong camp, a very strong alliance in Europe that would be a determining factor that would push for this issue further and other problematic issues in the continent. So this is where I see that this could potentially be very problematic. I hope that it will be consumed now. We have this conversation for another week or so, and then it goes away. But I am under the impression that it might not really go away the way we want to see it go away, particularly because of the Slovenian presidency starting in July.
Okay.
And I hope I'm wrong.
But Simonida, I know you are of the same opinion. You said it's a Pandora's box, that it feeds nationalist and populist agendas. It is an indication, though, isn't it, that the Dayton Accords just didn't really solve anything in the long term. Something needs to change.
This is a perennial question in the Western Balkans. I mean, I think if we take a look back, we take a step back, something needs to change in Europe as well in terms of the way that things are managed. But the question is, how do we see these changes and how do we pursue the changes? Because the Balkans in general has been very much perceived as an object of the international relations, of an item that needs to be solved. And I think the discussion that we're also having and the way that the non-paper was transmitted also reflects a rather pejorative position in which the region is. So I would not go that far to argue that something needs to change and now we need to change the borders. I think we need to deal with the local constituencies in order to understand what needs to change and how it can change. I mean, any attempt of change from the outside in this manner, I think is completely counterproductive. It only strengthens the nationalists, and Engjellushe was saying, at the EU level, but also the spoiler actors at the local level or at the national level in all of these countries. Because what needed to change was that the region needed to democratize, that these countries needed to transform politically and economically to converge to a Europe of values that we thought existed. I mean, it's not the change that anyone desired in this.
Well, let's go to Srecko on that one, because I want to ask him if he feels that Bosnia-Herzegovina has in fact democratized by having elections, by having parliaments, but so many parliaments, 3 separate presidencies, that it is in many ways almost the opposite of a democracy. Nobody really has a proper say in how the country's run.
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, the number of parliaments and governments in our case does not necessarily lead to greater democracy. I would say quite the opposite. I mean, especially now at the time of the corona crisis, Bosnia-Herzegovina, as well as many other countries, especially complex federal states like Bosnia-Herzegovina, have showed a major dysfunctionality in this kind of situation. On the other hand, we are seeing that some other countries, especially those that are much more mainstream, that are run by autocratic leaders, like, for example, Serbia, are functioning very well. And I think that the pandemic has drastically changed not only political system in the world, but also the local perception of what is good and what is bad in the politics. And I would also like to address the very first question that you asked at the beginning of this conversation: who is benefiting from this debate? And it is quite clear that all political leaders, be it from the ruling parties or from the opposition parties, be it in the Balkans or even in some European Union countries, are benefiting from this kind of discussion and these kind of radical ideas, because they trigger fear, they cause tensions, and then people talk only about them. They don't pay attention about vaccines. They don't feel so much concerned by the deepening economic and social
it could be a diversion, a means of drawing attention away from the actual problems in a country and creating more divisions. Engjellushe, you helped to negotiate Kosovo's independence at the end of a very bloody conflict. What happens if the problems, as outlined by Srecko and also by Simonida and by yourself, if the problems that have existed for a generation and more now, what happens if they are not sorted out?
Well, this is one of the approaches, I would say, circulating, that because of lack of EU perspective, because of Kosovo's weak statehood, Kosovo is still struggling with strengthening its statehood internationally. It doesn't have visa liberalization. It hasn't been treated properly by the EU.
But for the region as a whole, sorry to butt in, we're running out of time a bit. Does it mean conflict will come, or without reorganization can it be avoided?
I absolutely think so. The idea, the Euro-Atlantic idea of the Balkans is societies living in a multiculturalist, socio-economic and political setup. So this would be totally against that idea, and it doesn't have to be, despite all the problems, it doesn't. There is no need for rearrangement in order to make things better. This is actually a very strong signal for the EU to find a common ground for all EU 27, to find common ground to bring Western Balkan 6 into the EU and into the NATO structure, rather than play with very dangerous ideas that rhetorically they all main institutional leaders dismiss them as very dangerous and put them aside, but they keep coming back. So I think it's
okay. So can I just throw this last one to Simonida, taking on your point there, that about NATO accession and perhaps EU accession. Without that, into whose orbit are these countries likely to fall, and would that inevitably be more destabilizing?
I think it's likely to be, as much as I don't like dark scenarios, it's likely to be very much destabilizing. We can't put them all in one basket, and it's always very, it doesn't give credence to the differences between the countries, because there are countries that just have more historical ties and more influence from Turkey, from Russia, from China. But given that the overall preference of the population has over 2 decades been European integration, any inclination towards other actors will be destabilizing. It will not create a common agenda, and it will not bring the region forward to where the public and its population want it to be.
Very quickly, probably just a yes or a no, just stay with you, Simonida, because I don't have very much time. Will we ever see a greater Croatia, a greater Albania, a greater Serbia?
I hope not.
It doesn't sound like you're too sure.
Well, given that we were all hoping to see EU accession in our lifetimes, and I'm not sure at that point whether we will, let's hope that all of those greater ones will be as part of the European Union, without borders between these countries.
Listen, thank you very, very much indeed. Great to have the thoughts from Berlin, originally from Kosovo. That's Engjellushe Morina. Great to see you too as well. back on the programme, and thank you very much indeed out of Skopje and out of Sarajevo. Listen, thank you wherever you happen to be for watching this edition of Roundtable. I hope to have your company next time. Here is a reminder. You can see more news and features from the Balkans regions here on TRT World. Take a look at this. The next episode of Across the Balkans is on air from next Tuesday, May the 4th. You can catch up online anytime you like, and you can do the same with Roundtable. We have our own YouTube channel. From me, David Foster, from the team that put this together, thank you for watching. We hope to have your company next time. Until then, bye-bye.